Title: Transair Flight 810's engine failure over the Pacific Ocean. The calm before the storm. The clock on the cockpit's control panel flickered 1:28 a.m., its dull glow illuminating the concentrated faces of Captain Ron Michaels and First Officer Dan Sullivan. Outside, the vast Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beneath them, an ink-black void only broken by the occasional flicker of moonlight on the waves. "Looks like smooth flying all the way to Honolulu," Dan murmured, his fingers tapping the throttle lightly. Ron chuckled, his voice calm but seasoned with years of experience. "That's what they all say before something goes sideways." The radio crackled, just static. The soft hum of the Boeing 737's twin engines filled the cockpit, a sound so familiar it was almost background noise. Everything was routine, ordinary. But that was the thing about the sky, it had a cruel way of turning calm into chaos in seconds. Suddenly, a loud bang shattered the quiet. The aircraft jolted violently to the left, the metal frame groaning under the strain. Warning lights flared on the control panel. Engine 1 failure. Jesus! Engine failure. Dan shouted, gripping the controls as the plane dipped. Ron's training kicked in instantly. Feathering Engine 1. Maintain altitude. Call Mayday. The aircraft trembled as smoke curled from the left engine, visible in the wing's blinking navigation lights. They were 40 miles off the Hawaiian coast, open ocean beneath them and nowhere to land. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. Transair Flight 810. Engine failure. Requesting immediate return to Honolulu." Dan's voice was steady, but his pulse hammered in his ears. The radio hissed, then a reply. "Roger, Transair 810. Return approved. Maintain altitude if possible." But the plane was already losing altitude. The descent into chaos. In the cargo hold, thick metal containers rattled against their straps as the plane shuddered. In the cockpit, the situation worsened. "We're losing oil pressure on Engine 2, Ron said grimly, eyes scanning the instrument panel. "We can't make it back." Dan's mind raced. 2 failing engines. Over the ocean. No safe landing options. "Prepare for ditching," Ron ordered, flipping switches. "This bird's going into the water." Outside, the Pacific loomed dark and merciless. The ocean didn't forgive mistakes. Dan felt a pang of fear, but shoved it down. "I'll broadcast our last position." The aircraft continued to descend, shuddering with every passing second. The moonlight now glistened brighter off the approaching waves, closer than they should have been. "Brace for impact," Ron shouted. The Boeing's nose lifted at the last moment as the water surged up to meet them. Smash! The impact was brutal. Metal screeched, glass shattered, and the ocean swallowed them whole. Section 3. Survival Instincts. Salt water gushed into the cockpit. Dan gasped as freezing water filled his boots, rising fast.
"Out!"
"We have to get out," Ron yelled, slamming against the cockpit door now twisted from impact. Dan grabbed the emergency release and forced the door open. Water surged around them, dragging at their legs as they fought to escape. They scrambled onto the sinking fuselage, coughing seawater, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The night sky stretched above, eerily calm now, the shattered remains of Flight 810 bobbing in the waves. Ron pulled a life raft from an emergency hatch and threw it into the water. "Come on." They scrambled aboard just as the plane groaned one last time before slipping beneath the surface, vanishing into the dark. Silence. Nothing but the soft lapping of waves. Dan looked around, wide-eyed. "We're in the middle of nowhere." "Not for long," Ron replied, his jaw set. "They got our distress call. They'll come." But hours passed. The cold gnawed at them. Sharks circled somewhere beneath, invisible in the black water. Then, distant lights. "Flare gun!" Dan shouted, reaching into the raft's emergency pack. He fired. A red arc split the night sky. Moments later, a rescue helicopter buzzed overhead, its spotlight slicing through the darkness, locking onto them. Final scene. The thrilling climax. But fate had one more twist. The helicopter hovered, but its crew struggled against the high winds. The rescue basket dangled wildly above the raft. "Go first," Dan yelled over the roar of the blades. Ron hesitated but nodded. He grabbed the basket, which swung dangerously before lifting him away. Dan waited, gripping the raft as waves smashed against its sides. But then, a dorsal fin sliced through the water nearby. Sharks! The helicopter swung back for him, the basket dipping low, but the raft tipped suddenly as a massive wave surged beneath it, flipping Dan into the ocean. The cold was shocking, but worse was the knowledge of what lurked below. He kicked hard, spotting the basket above, his fingers just brushing it, when something tugged at his leg. A shark. He thrashed wildly, adrenaline giving him strength as he broke the surface. The rescue crew lowered the basket again. This time, Dan grabbed it. He felt the water pull at him as the shark's fin closed in. Then the winch yanked him free, lifting him just as a massive shape lunged beneath the waves. He was hauled aboard, gasping, his leg bleeding from a shallow bite. Ron clapped him on the shoulder. "Close one." Dan managed a grin through the pain. "Let's not do that again." The helicopter turned toward Honolulu, leaving the endless ocean behind. But below, in the dark Pacific, the twisted wreck of Flight 810 sank deeper, its secrets swallowed whole. Days later, Dan sat in a hospital bed, leg bandaged, as news reports replayed the story of their survival. But something stuck with him. The moment in the water, the pull of the shark, the vast emptiness of the ocean. Some things, he thought, you never fully escape. And sometimes, survival comes at the price of carrying the weight of what could have been. As he stared out the window at the endless sea beyond, Dan wondered, if they'd been 5 minutes later, would they have made it? The ocean didn't care. It never did.